This is Dorie Clark. I am here on behalf of Newsweek with our weekly interview show Better, and I am so pleased to be here with Morriss and Frances Frei. They are the authors of the new book Unleashed, and today we are going to be talking about how to empower everyone around you. Such an important question. Frances, welcome.
Oh, it is such a pleasure to be, at least virtually, in a room with you, Dorie. So wonderful.
It has been too long, Dorie. We're thrilled.
We're thrilled.
Thank you. It is great. It is great to be talking with both of you. So the first place that I wanted to start, I know Unleashed is an amazing book. There's so much to talk with you about, but I want to actually go back in the past to your previous book, which I love. It's one of my favorites, Uncommon Service. And you both talked about a concept that has stayed with me since then. And in fact, as you know, I have a whole section in my forthcoming book, The Long Game, about it. It's like my favorite thing ever. And it is talking about your concept of how to decide what to be bad at. Can you explain this and what this means?
It's such a good question for right now. So the way we think about it is decide what you're going to be great at, and then reverse engineer what that means you have to be bad at. If you can't articulate what you're optimized to be bad at alongside of what you're optimized to be great at, you're going to end up with exhausted mediocrity. So so I guess it's decide to be great and then reveal what that means you're going to be bad at. I love that. I just love that that's making it, that has stayed with you so long. We used to call it Dare to Be Bad, which sounds like a romance novel.
Yeah, I mean, the book was based on the observation that the companies that were really killing it, particularly in the services space, where we had done a whole bunch of research, were strategically great at some things, the things their customers valued most, but they were also very, very strategically bad and sometimes just downright horrible at these other things. And one of the questions we got all the time was, does this strategy apply to me as a human being as well? And the answer, as you wrote about, is a resounding yes. And we wrote about that a little bit in our most recent book, Unleashed, as well.
It's so fantastic. I think it's really powerful because, I spend a lot of time thinking about strategy and strategic thinking. And ultimately, in most cases, it's not that strategy is, so crazy. Oh, they saw something no one saw. Like oftentimes strategy is really obvious. But the problem I've found is one of courage, that people are not willing to decide what to be bad at. And I think that your framing of it is just so incredibly powerful that we have to be willing to go there. So thank you for that. I love it.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, one of the other things we talked about on the strategy space in this most recent book is how strategy sometimes gets locked up in the C-suite, and so it's really essential to be very deliberate about cascading that strategy to the rest of the organization, where it can actually be effective.
Yeah, I love it. And I'd also like to take a moment to welcome the folks who are joining us live. Thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to type your name into the chat box. Let us know who you are, where you're calling in from. I see Anna's already here from New Hampshire jumping on this, saying hello. So let us know who you are, and feel free to type your questions for Anne and Frances into the chat box. We would love to hear from you about the leadership questions that are on your mind. So Frances and Anne, your new book is Unleashed, and you raise, I think, a really interesting point about your definition of leadership, that so often people seem to get it wrong. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about leadership and what really is the most essential from your perspective?
Yeah, so the way we think about leadership is that leadership is about making other people better. So it's not about us. So our first chapter is called "It's Not About You." Like just get that out of the way, leadership. And when it is about you, you are not participating in the act of leading. So it can be about you sometimes, but you've just taken a step off the leadership stage when you've done it. So leadership is not about us. Leadership is about making others better as a result of our presence and in a way that lasts into our absence. And this last year, we published the book on June 2nd of last year, and the absence, unbeknownst to us, the book was perfectly timed in that regard because we were all in the absence. not perfectly timed for the book tour, but we're delighted to be here with you to substitute for that.
That's right. We just get to extend the pleasure even further. So it all works out. We'd like to say hello to Chantal, who's joining us from Geneva, Todd in New York, Carrie's here from LA, DT is here from Rochester, Bernhardt is from Munich, Marion's here from Atlanta. This is fantastic. Welcome, everyone. And we're glad to have you type your questions for Frances and Anne into the chat box so we can see what is on your mind. And so, Frances, this is a question specifically for you. You have established a brand for yourself over the past few years. I'm sure you don't necessarily think of it this way, but it seems like you are the extremely troubled company with PR problems whisperer. You have been a senior leader at Uber. You are on the board of WeWork. People seem to bring you in when the you-know-what hits the fan, which I love. Talk to me a little bit about that. What have you learned from having the front seat view in so many of these companies that have been exploding in the public eye, at least prior to you coming in with your strategic interventions?
Well, the interesting thing is that Anne and I do all of this work together. I'm the pretty face in the front of the room, but Anne and I do all of it together. And the reason we like going towards burning buildings, if that's what it is that in order for really like big change to occur, and that's what we like to do. We don't like incremental change. We like big change. You have to have a really clear and compelling change mandate. Well, you know what's a really clear and compelling change mandate? Front page of a newspaper.
This smell of smoke in the burning building. Yeah.
So it's important to honor the past and have a rigorous and optimistic way forward. But in the middle of that, boy, do we need a clear and compelling change mandate. It's not the only one, of course, but it just makes change a lot easier when the desire to change is at the top of everybody's mind.
And for the record, it's not the only thing we do.
Yes. It's just the only thing that anyone talks about what we do. We help lots of great companies that are doing well, but this one, and we love it. We love that work. Change can happen very quickly. Their organizations are usually filled with really good people. And what I like to say is they just didn't get some secret memos. And we do that. We love redemption stories. We love every aspect of it.
That's fantastic. And I love the caveat that in order to work with the two of you, that you don't technically have to be on the being pilloried on the front page of the newspaper.
You are welcome to be. We will take your call. It's very clarifying.
And we'll take your call very quickly because we know we understand the urgency, but goodness, no.
Amazing. That's great. Well, I specifically also have a question for Anne. So Anne, I know you have been an entrepreneur. You were the founder and the CEO of Gene Peaks. You now run the Leadership Consortium, which helps. It's a leadership accelerator, which sounds fantastic, training people for high-level leadership positions in global companies. So can you talk a little bit about this? I mean, from your own experience in the trenches and now helping other people obtain the training and the mindset necessary for these leadership roles. How has this played out, and how does it all sort of factor into the lessons that you're putting forward in Unleashed?
Yeah, it's all integrated is the headline. My background is biotech and company building. Yeah. Frances was spending a lot of time out in Silicon Valley. We were seeing the same patterns.
It was incredible.
In that there were demographic patterns in who was succeeding in these organizations, who was thriving. And there were clear patterns in the barriers that were getting in the way of historically underrepresented groups from getting to the top and then succeeding wildly when they got there. And so we really designed this company together, the Leadership Consortium, to really systematically go after some of those barriers. One of them, I'll just give you an example. One of them is what we call Girl Scout leadership, in the following sense, is that many of us, and I include myself in this category, we're very good at putting our heads down and trying to be the best in our functional category, and just assuming someone was going to show up and put patches on us and tell us "atta girl" and give us the next challenge. And in fact, navigating that environment requires lifting your head up and really understanding the enterprise and really understanding what enterprise leadership means, and develop some of those skills before you get invited and start fighting for and lobbying for that next role. And so part of the curriculum for people who go through our core leaders program is that they develop some of those enterprise leadership skills and perspectives.
And it's the most fulfilling work we do, because I mean, we help organizations, but we get to help leaders. It's the most diverse group of leaders that we work with. These are amazing people that we're like removing some pebbles that are in their way and helping with swagger. Honestly, it's like organizational swagger from getting all of the current knowledge. And it's just such a deep pleasure to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the metric we care the most about, is that you are a more confident leader coming out of the program, which is relatively quick. It's an 8-week experience before you walked in. Yeah. And so if we can get those confidence levels up, then we can unleash a whole army of leaders that reflect back the populations that we're all seeking to serve and influence.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I love that. And for those of you tuning in who'd like to learn more about Anne and Frances and their work, go to the website, theleadersguide.com. You can learn more. And if you'd like to make sure you never miss one of our weekly Newsweek Better interview series, you can go to my website, DorieClark.com, sign up for the newsletter there. You can get a free self-assessment and you'll get reminders about these weekly interviews. So we had a great question actually come in across the transom from Marion. Marion wanted to know, of the classic thought leaders in your space, who have been some of your bigger influences? Who are the people that you listen to and learn from? We're all keen for recommendations.
Oh, well, Amy Edmondson at the tippy top of the list. Sadal Neely, Francesca Gino, who else?
Stephanie Creary,
Stephanie
young
Creary
scholar
at Wharton, but has had great influence on us. Tina Opie at Babson.
I know
There's got to be some gentlemen in this category too.
Peter Drucker, shout out to Peter Drucker.
Oh, Adam Grant is just like, incredible. So we get influence where we consume all of it.
And of course, Dorie Clark.
And that goes without saying.
That's just a given. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. And Francesca Gino has been a recent guest on the Better Show, talking about her book Rebel Talent. So such a terrific list of folks. Marion, thank you for your question. And Vijaya had a question. She was curious, how do you think that leadership roles will shift post-pandemic? Obviously, this is kind of an inflection point over the past year. You were mentioning that that absence and how to empower others when you are not around has taken on a new level of importance. But what else are you seeing, and how does that shake out as people are slowly, tentatively kind of beginning to go back to the office?
There's
such a great question.
It's such a rich question. We spend a lot of time thinking about trust in the work that we do. We talk about it and think about it as the foundation of leadership. That, of course, won't change going forward. It hasn't changed in thousands of years. But when we talk about trust, we talk about the core drivers underneath it, where trust is a natural output. And those are authenticity, logic, and empathy. One of the things that we observed through the pandemic is that the need for empathy in building trust, the bar just went higher. It was always, that empathy was always important. But what was revealed to all of us, I think, over the course of the pandemic, the way the pandemic was experienced in an unequal fashion across communities, is that our need for understanding the experience of our fellow humans was actually much higher than we thought. And that, of course, applies to organizations. And part of that was actually beaming into the lives of our colleagues over the last year and really getting a very tangible sense of what else is happening in their lives. We used to go to go to the office and in many ways hide the chaos, even like as women, sometimes we would show up and pretend, or as moms, we would pretend that we didn't have this chaos that we were organizing with our kiddos. And I think there's been a really honest reset over what does it mean to integrate work and life, and how do we build organizations that are more empathetic and that account for that integration going forward.
Leadership is it now allows us to incorporate more of people's humanity. Interestingly, now that it's post-pandemic, I think we all became more empathetic in this year. It's an amazing event that occurred, tragic event, and a consequence of it is that we're all like heightened to one another, and that's that can be a challenge, but it can be a superpower. And so organizations that are bringing that empathy forward are going to really kill it. Organizations that are saying, oh, get back to work and do it like you used to do it. I think they didn't get that secret memo. That's what I would say.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That's great. And you were alluding to the concept of trust. And I know, Frances, you have a TED Talk that has been seen more than 5 million times. You talk about the triangle of trust, and you both have talked a lot about this concept, especially something interesting that you call the empathy wobble. What is this? And why is this something that we need as leaders to watch out for?
So whenever there's a breakdown in trust, we can trace it to someone doubted, our skeptics doubted our authenticity, our logic, or our empathy. We call it whichever trust wobble it is. And so in this case, it's an empathy wobble. Once you diagnose which it is, we can help overcome it in our absence. The book gives all the prescriptions. We're happy to give any of the prescriptions here. As an empathy wobbler myself, I'll just so you ask the right one between the two of us. As an empathy wobbler, what it means is that like it's the real me with rigorous logic. But if I don't reveal that I'm centered on you, you're not going to trust me. And there is no extra amount of logic that's going to overcome, or no extra amount of authenticity and the real me that's going to overcome the fact that I'm not centered on you. And so an empathy wobble is when it's closer to being about me, and that if I am present to your needs and really revealing that I'm centered on you, it's just an accelerant for trust.
And
what's your wobble?
Well, let me comment on your wobble more, sweetheart. And one of the challenges of our modern life is that there are empathy killers, literally.
That is the greatest empathy killer in the world.
Everywhere we look. So we're distracted by ourselves and our own devices. And the signal that that's sending to the people around us is that I matter more, my needs are more important than your needs. Yeah. So the antidote really on empathy wobbles is presence. So to be present when you are in the presence of other human beings, you can go back to focusing on yourself when you're home alone and when you're not practicing leadership. It is a verb. It's not that you're a leader or not a leader. You're a leader when you are practicing leadership, and that requires trust, which requires empathy.
Yeah, there's an amazing comment in the chat from Dr. Ogilvy, which is the point I was going to. So it was written at the same time that I said it, which is there are so many people that are thriving more in this remote setting because there's no water cooler, there's no bullying in the hallways, there's not, you don't have to endure the private slights
and indignities that happen in spaces that aren't built for you.
So there's an audience for almost all of it, or a record for almost all of it. And it's really important for us to look at who's thriving now. And then when we go forward to this new place, let's bring all of those beautiful things. But we were inclusive of a lot more people in this, in the unfortunately the space we found ourselves in, but magnificently.
Yeah. And Dr. Vogel asked, what do you advise companies to do about it? The thing that was so beautiful about that Slack study, which was the most visible one that brought this data out, is that we have this information now. So there was some speculation around this, but we have great data to confirm this. Yeah. So let's build policy around it.
And specifically, what do we advise companies to do about it? We become more inclusive. We call it the inclusion dial. But despite any difference that any of us brings to the table, it's the job of all of us to make sure that each of us feels physically and emotionally safe and welcome. And then and only then do we get to go, because of our unique perspectives, we get to be celebrated and cherished. And so
and our bias, and it's radical, but we want to say to companies, until you figure out how to do that, you don't have a right to drag your employees back to the office.
You do not have a right to, if you don't have a plan to make everyone physically and emotionally safe and welcome. And then here's the fun counterintuitive fact. What we write about in Unleashed is that the benefits of diverse groups are so well understood. Historically, we have put the burdens of diversity, and there are in the organization, really squarely on the shoulders of the diverse. And where we really should be putting the burdens of diversity is on the shoulders of those that are included. So if you are celebrated and cherished in your organization, it's your obligation to proactively seek out the ways to help and amplify and elevate and create the conditions.
It's also, in many environments, just practical.
We're not going to let you speak, Dorie. We're just going to keep. Thank you for allowing us to have a lunchtime date. We really appreciate it.
This is the risk of interviewing two people. We'll just talk to each other.
It's so interesting. Yeah. Go on.
Well, our friend Bozoma St. John said to us once, why do I, as a Black woman, have to do it all? There's way more of you than there are of me.
Why do we as queer women have to do it all? There is way more of you than there are of me. Awesome.
All right, it's your turn,
Okay,
Dorie.
Amazing. I love it. You're making my job easy. So for all of our viewers who are enjoying this conversation, incidentally, you can learn more about Frances and Anne and their work at theleadersguide.com. And if you want to make sure that your friends can benefit from this conversation as well, hit the like button, hit the share button, so that they can see this. And a question actually for you, which is people seemed in the comments very excited, Anne, about the trainings that you were talking about. And Samantha says, hey, wait, I went to their website, but I didn't see information about the trainings. Where can I find information?
Yeah. So the work we were talking about is through a company called the Leadership Consortium. Mm-hmm. It's a very long website.
You know what? We're going to put a link to it in theleadersguide.com by this afternoon.
So we're going to fix it. We partner with companies to deliver training. So we don't yet offer programs for individuals, but if your company is excited about this kind of value proposition, we'd be delighted to have a conversation.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much.
And you can find us, Clubhouse. So you want free every Tuesday from 4 to 6, we have a case discussion. So you want to have a free access to this, come on over to Clubhouse.
Oh, very good. Okay, Tuesdays 4 to 6 Eastern, I assume.
Eastern. Yeah, Tuesdays 4 to 6 Eastern. We have a case discussion every Tuesday.
Very nice. Thank you.
Audio-only case discussion, and it works spectacularly well.
Oh, good tip. I like it. So a wonderful question came in from Todd in New York City. And Todd wants to know, to empower others, leaders need to voluntarily relinquish some of their own power. How do you get them to be willing to do that? What are your thoughts about that?
So the opening quote in our book is from Toni Morrison, and it says, once you achieve that power that you so richly deserve, your job is to go ahead and empower someone else. So when leadership is not about you, your sole responsibility is the empowerment of others. So if you're hoarding power, you would score very low on the leadership scale with us. And so if we can redefine the definition of leadership, the empowerment is at the circle. And here's why we would do it. If you are leading us, Dorie, and you empower us, you as a leader are going to do so much better because we're going to perform so much better. And then the people that we touch and the people that we touch. So the performance boost that you get from empowerment is skyrockets. And so the hoarding of power will be in an organization that if you want greater performance and greater engagement, well, we're going to thump you, I guess is what it is. If I can just really go quick, right, cut down to it, we'll thump you if you hoard power because we'll outperform you like maniacs.
Yeah. I mean, that's when people bring that mental model to this conversation, that's where we start, where it is to convince you that it's not a fixed pie of power that when you give away, you have less. In fact, it's the opposite. The more power you give away, the more you end up having.
It's like love.
like love. And
sorry.
Beautiful.
It is a very direct path to performance.
Yeah.
So when you learn to do that well, you attract a tremendous amount of talent. You can do more as a group, and you end up, to use Frances's favorite technical term, thumping your competitors.
Yes, I love that. We are not going to forget our thumping metaphor. That will stay with us. So another great question came in from Anna. She says, as an immigrant, I'd love to build trust and empower the concept of trust in my community. How can I do it? Your advice is greatly appreciated. What are your thoughts about trust building for all leaders and perhaps especially those who come from underrepresented communities?
So what we find, and I'll do this tee up for Anne, because I didn't get you to comment on Authenticity Wobble before, but I will now.
Yeah.
So
you think I can't get out of that? Try again. Yeah.
So whenever we're underrepresented, it's statistically more likely that we're going to have an authenticity wobble. So when I'm around people that are just like me, nobody has an authenticity wobble. When I'm around people that are different than me and I'm not the one with power, more likely to have an authenticity wobble. So one of the ways to overcome it is to learn how to overcome an authenticity wobble. And you are an authenticity wobbler. So how do you do that?
It's a really great question. I'm just going to go back to some of the logistics of it. No, but in all seriousness, if you want to learn more about trust, the fastest and quickest way is to go watch Frances's beautiful TED Talk, which is 12 minutes.
Oh, golly, but watch it on 1.5 X speed. So it's, 8 minutes.
Frances has decided that she was speaking too slowly. I think it's perfect because it brings some gravitas to the conversation, but you could speed it up a little bit. So that 10 minutes, you get a great education in these 3 core trust drivers, which are authenticity, logic, and empathy. What Frances just acknowledged is that those of us coming into spaces from an underrepresented or marginalized position are more likely to wobble on authenticity. We actually have a great debate going around who's accountable for that pattern, right? And where we come out is that essentially organizations have a tremendous amount of responsibility for creating spaces where other people can show up authentically.
Organizations and communities, to the question that was asked.
Exactly. Yeah. And the individual who is likely to wobble on authenticity also has some accountability. And the reason she has some accountability is because she wants to have some agency in that space. Right? Because we do not yet live in a world where...
that I want to design.
Right, that Frances wants to live in, where all organizations have this competence, or all communities have this, or all nations, for example, have this competence. So until then, those of us who want to show up and build trust in those spaces have to take some accountability for the likelihood that we are going to stumble sometimes. Now, there are lots of fun ways to do that. I happen to love Byron Katie's work. Her website is thework.com. It's a little too woo-woo for some of our friends in the business community, but she has a really powerful tool that challenges you on the story you're telling about those spaces. So, for example, if the story you're telling is I'm not welcome here, or I don't deserve to be here, or maybe there's a little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm questioning whether I'm even qualified to be in the space. She has a great tool called the 4 questions that invites you to challenge that storyline and find an alternative one and show up in a more empowered way in that space.
And in a more authentic way. And I love that you use small hacks, like the pictures behind us are great ways to remedy authenticity wobbles, which is to just have triggers to your authentic self, so that if you're not showing up, I'm going to show up when I see those.
Yeah, I call them humanity hacks, because they're
hacks.
Signals that remind me of my own 3-dimensional humanity. I used to do a lot of fundraising, on the top story of a midtown building where I was the only woman in the room. And I would just figure out how to put a picture of our dog in there.
Yeah.
Because I would see the dog and be like, oh. And it would just, instead of all that armor, I was waiting for everyone to judge me and want to know why there wasn't someone else in front of the room. I just could see my dog and relax.
And then
so that
be
kind
you.
of stuff,
Yeah.
and be me, because that is
the most beautiful thing in the world,
and the path to building trust.
I am so with you. In fact, I have a built-in humanity hack. He has shockingly not done it this week, but normally my cat walks in front of my face at least 3 times during our interviews.
He walks behind you, so
there we go. I'm glad he's got the bases covered somehow. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Frances Frei and Morriss. It's a wonderful conversation. You are the authors of the new book, Unleashed, which is about leadership, about how to empower others around you. For everyone who is tuning in and wants to learn more about Anne and Frances's fantastic work, go to theleadersguide.com and you can learn more. And if you want to make sure you never miss one of our weekly sessions, follow me on LinkedIn at dorieclark.com/LinkedIn. You will get reminders. Anne and Frances, as our parting words, if people are looking for one tip, one strategy, one low-hanging fruit about how they can better take action on unleashing the power within other people and being a better leader today, what would you recommend that they think about or start doing?
We'll leave you with the phrase, simply begin. So if you have an idea for how to make your organization and community better, just get started. There's a tremendous amount of power in just breaking through that barrier of action and starting to build momentum.
Don't wait for someone to put a Girl Scout patch on you. Simply begin.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you here. We will see you viewers next week, and have a wonderful Thursday.
Awesome.
Thanks.